One part wild, one part curious, and another part educational. All right, everyone, listen up, because Mars's ingress into Gemini is a very big deal indeed. Mars enters Gemini on August 20th and is going to stay here through March 25th. That is 7 months of Mars in this one area of your chart and in this one sign of the zodiac. And that is atypical for Mars, who usually spends about 2 months in any given sign, but it is not atypical for Mars retrograde. You heard me. Mars retrograde is coming right in tandem with eclipse season at the end of October. So Mars will be retrograde from October 30th through July 12th. So we'll be talking more about that as we move through this transit. But today I just want to give us a little prequel into the Mars and Gemini energy. So I do have an article on my website detailing everything that's been going on in our Gemini house lately in the last few years. We had a Venus retrograde in Gemini in 2020. We've had 2 Mercury retrogrades in 2021 and in 2022 in Gemini. We have also had eclipses in Gemini in 2021 and 2020. So there's been a lot happening in this sector of our chart. A lot of that has involved a confusing square to Neptune, a disorienting square to Neptune, and yes, stupefying square to Neptune, which would explain a lot of the madness going on in the world. The Gemini sector of our chart is inherently craving spontaneity, craving things to remain interesting. So it is sort of the nature of this area of our chart to have something like a retrograde, which is taking some steps back and reconfiguring and reconsidering what we need to update and change to keep this area of our life feeding us, nourishing us, interesting. Gemini. So we're up for a 7-month-long Mars energizing the Gemini part of your chart. If you want to know your retrograde scope, you can check that out on my article on my website on Mars retrograde. That article is titled Renovations in the Gemini House and Mars retrograde 2022 through 2023. So you can find out more about that there. But let's start off with what Mars in Gemini is all about. So Mars is our action principle. Mars is what gets us out of bed in the morning. It's what motivates us. It's our fight or flight response. It's how we go about activities. So Mars in Gemini will have a tendency to scatter our energy a little bit, as does mutable sign, Mars in a mutable sign. So it's going to sort of disperse our focus a little bit. And because we're bored. We need some new stimulus in this area of our life. Once again, we're figuring it out. It's under construction. So with Mars entering the scene, first, it's going to feel pretty normal. Just Mars in Gemini. It's just going to feel like a pretty standard Mars in Gemini transit where we want to sort of differentiate the way that we go about doing things in our everyday life. We might want to sort of scatter our focus, pick up different activities. It's not as streamlined, and there's not a lot of certainty here. There's also one of my favorite things about Mars and Gemini is there isn't so much a fear of failure. Because Gemini is one of those signs that is inherently experimental. It is a little bit of a jokester. It doesn't mind making a little bit of an ass of themselves. It really doesn't. It's all just for fun. It's all a learning process. If we fail, if we fall on our face, it's a learning experience. And hey, we'll get to laugh about it later. So that's a little bit about Mars and Gemini. There is an absence of a fear of falling. So we can give ourselves permission to differentiate, to stir the pot, to mix things up, to follow our impulse a little bit. It's a learning experience. The thing with Mars retrograde is it is a big pulling back. When we do experience Mars retrograde, and we will go into more detail about this later, there is often a crisis in this area of our chart around, gosh, like I'm not really sure how to find my way through this obstacle. Or maybe the obstacle is a lack of desire. Maybe it's an issue with one's direction. Maybe we suddenly just don't have the energy or motivation we once had to go about something. So the story of the Mars retrograde is going to be this pulling back. You might have to rest. You may have to take the bench. I think about Mars retrograde as the halftime, where even the star player has to take a break and re-strategize our moves to get through the second half of the game based on where we are now. I think of retrogrades as a slingshot. We have to pull back in order to launch. So there will be some sort of crisis or challenge that the retrograde presents. So yeah, pay attention, because as Mars arrives on the scene in Gemini, it may feel normal. We may not feel much until Mars hits that shadow degree, which is about 8 degrees Gemini. We may start to feel what that story is going to be about, because Mars stations retrograde in about 2 months from now. So that story is coming. It is near. So start paying attention. That's a little bit about Mars retrograde. It's going to be a learning experience. And yeah, but I hope ultimately, as always, it serves you in the highest and that it is good for you. So right now, that is your Mars retrograde, Mars in Gemini shot of the day. And yeah, we'll continue this conversation later. Bye. Thanks so much for tuning in with me today. Foundations of Astrology relaunches on September 7th. You can find out more information about this 11-week course on my website, katherineurban.com. Also, you know where to find me on all platforms at AstroKatherine.